Yeah, this is Emily Moyer. She has agreed to get up really early and talk to me about this thing because I think she's really passionate about what it is that she's talking about. And I really want to hear it because I agree with her. I think that we all need to hear this stuff. So one of the things that's really hot right now is this discussion about programmable substances, programmable matter. What is it? I think it's all kinds of things. You guys know I talk a lot about food, and last night, excuse me, last night I was at a lecture I was giving, and I said to the audience, try to imagine your life without food. How much time would that free up? Asleep and then doing other things. It would free it all up, wouldn't it, Emily? I mean, think about it.
Especially for someone like me, because I'm a foodie. I don't know if I want to imagine the world without food.
That's the thing. That's the thing. I am too. But yeah. Emily has been talking here and there, bits and pieces. It's very enticing. This idea that she has about sugar, because sugar, wheat, and dairy, the three most addictive substances that are out there. I truly believe that grains kill. Dairy. You should have, even though cheese is just, it's like crack to me. Yeah. It's very difficult, but it's also something that is a very abusive thing to eat because of the sources. But she's going to talk to us about sugar. So Emily, it's all yours.
So let me just give you a quick background on sort of how I came to this spot. About almost 4 years ago, I found myself in a really, a bad place emotionally, because I was, at that time still dealing with programming breaking down and not dealing with it and stuff like that, but also really a really bad place physically for the first time in my life. Yeah. I was just sick all the time and didn't feel good. And I heard this woman speaking on Mel Fabregas's show, a health show called Sanitas, and her name was Anne Baroque, and she is a very dear friend of mine who just died recently. Very sad. But she was talking about Candida, and I listened to her. She had suffered from multiple sclerosis in her 20s and had basically healed herself from multiple sclerosis once she realized that it was caused by Candida, and eating a diet that would clear the body of that. Mm-hmm. She feels that almost all diseases, particularly all autoimmune diseases, are caused by Candida. So I listened to her, and I knew that this is what I had. And at the end of the interview, I said that her office was in Los Angeles. So I made an appointment when I was ready, because I knew it was going to be a severe, strict diet. And so I went and saw her, and I went on a really, really strict diet for 90 days, which I mostly still adhere to today. And it's not no grain. It's no gluten, no dairy, no sugar, no soy, nothing artificial, and a bunch of other small little things in there, which sounds really crazy. But I thought, okay, at this point I was willing to pretty much do anything to feel better. And very immediately I started to feel better. My body started to come back to what I knew it to be. But one of the things that I didn't expect that started to happen was the programming really started to break down. So as I was becoming more healthy and things should have been really good, I was also starting to have memories of things that I had sort of blocked before, that had been fuzzy, and it was almost like the healthier my body became, the faster they were coming, and I couldn't deal with it. And so I was still engaging in other forms of destructive behavior to deal with that. And one of the big things for me, more even than the gluten or anything like that, was the sugar. I had always been, since my teenage years, a sugar addict. As a child, I was not permitted to have candy. So when I turned 16, for me, that was licensed to eat candy. And I sure did. And I was sugar to the point that I would wake up in the middle of the night, go to 7-Eleven, buy candy, come home and eat it in my bed, and wake up with gummy bears stuck in my hair and stuff like that. It was crazy. In speaking with a lot of other people who have backgrounds with projects, programs, things like that, they also had a lot of issues with sugar and certain kinds of foods and whatnot. Yeah. And I even got to the point, and I'm not 100% certain about this, but we're in this space now where we can't wait for 100% certainty to start talking about things.
Right.
I feel like it was possible that missions and things like that were actually encapsulated in these trips to go get candy. That I was thinking I was waking up in the middle of the night to go get sugar, to go get candy, and there was actually activities being done, and then I was being sort of brought back into myself with the consumption of the candy.
Wow.
And I'm not 100% sure about that, but I've spoken about it with some other people, and I don't think it's that far off. So anyway, the biggest thing about that diet for me was that I wasn't eating sugar anymore. And so now, with the exception of occasional dark chocolate that doesn't have any or very little of any kind of sugar in it, I don't eat candy. I haven't eaten candy for 4 years. And there was a time when I thought I would never be able to live like that. But, during that 4 years is when all of the ability to finally begin talking about the things I'd experienced came, when the recognition of what had really gone on in my life, and the ability to start to make changes. Once I came through that really heavy beginning part where all the programming was breaking down, I was able to get a hold of myself again and pull myself together and really start to make forward progress. But I think the food we eat is keeping us so fuzzy that it is helping to contain and store and not make clear a lot of the traumas that we've been through, a lot of the programming for some of us. And so anyway, so that's been very interesting. What started happening for me, people started talking about programmable matter. Like, I paid a lot of attention to all the black goo conversation. And I wasn't anywhere near understanding sugar as programmable matter at the time, but I'll just let you know now that I became suspicious of Harold Kautzvella when I looked. I thought I liked him for all the same reasons you did and other people did, but I heard him. He had created a product to help people with Morgellons, and when I was already into the diet and knowing some about sugar at this point, but in that product there was sugar. And so I thought, this doesn't make any sense. Sugar is what feeds Morgellons, because I think Morgellons is directly related to Candida. And Candida is a condition of yeast, fungus, and parasites in the body that are all feeding on the foods that break down to sugar. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's interesting. The thing he says that is supposed to help Morgellons has sugar in it. So I was immediately a little bit suspicious. That was my first clue that there was something wrong there. And then all the other stuff came out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so fast forward, there's starting to be more and more things about programmable matter and about how information can be stored in the body on DNA and this and that, whatnot. Yeah. And I remember a couple of years ago, it's kind of more than that now, but when the vaping machines first became big. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I had a friend who I love dearly in Texas who was really early on to that. She was the first person I knew who was doing that. She was addicted to it. She was like on it like it was like a pacifier, like a binky. And I noticed her behavior started to become strange, and we just weren't really friends anymore. And so I thought, dude, is there mind control related to that? So I started to research mind control e-cigarettes, mind control vaping machines. And I found a quote, which I wish I would have saved because I didn't realize how important it was then. And I think it's either been scrubbed or I just can't find where I found it then. I found a quote from Nikola Tesla that said something like, and I may not have the exact wording here, something like, in the future, men will smoke these little machines. They will taste good. They will think they are cool, and they will be under mind control. And I thought, wow, okay, look at this. It's a crystalline liquid. It's sweet. Mm-hmm. And the way that most of these machines are charged, they charge the USB port on the computer. So there could be an app in that running in the background. There could be transferring information, and it could be being stored in a crystalline liquid. And then the people are not only smoking it in and taking it into their body, but they're blowing it out. Have you seen how much smoke these things create? It's like they're making chemtrails. Like if someone blows that in the bar, it's like they're blowing chemtrails in the bar.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I started to think, that's interesting. That could be programmable matter, and that could carry information. And I left it at that for I've thought that for a number of years. And then sometime earlier this year on one of my runs, it just dawned on me. I was really thinking about how sugar is in everything. And I was like, it's crystalline, it's cubic. And they're talking about storing information on crystals and cubes, and that you can store the whole world of information on something this big. And actually, and even I correlate a lot of different information. There was an episode of Fringe where this kid was storing historical data on these little glass cubes, and they look almost like sugar cubes, right? So I was like, oh my God, the sugar, it's crystalline, it's cubic. They love both of those things. They could be like using that as something to program or something to store information on or to transfer information to. And I have done a little teeny bit of research on it, and there seems to be some, if I can understand what they're talking about, I don't think I'm completely off base. I need to have time to do more research, and my life just isn't set up for that right now. But I've decided to talk about it anyway, because I think, especially for everybody, but really in our community, this is super duper important. And I also, so there we go. Think about it. And then I started to think about how when you're little, like they advertise the cartoons on the sugar cereal boxes. So then you have kids sitting in front, they know they're going to eat the cereal while they're watching TV. And one of the things that happened to me when I was experiencing program breaking down was this flush of like cartoon tunes that had words and information attached to them. Like I would find myself like whistling or singing like the Smurf song, but not with the words from the Smurf thing. There would be all of this random words that I would consider to be like words coming from something demonic or entity kind of related, or that were Twilight Language kind of words. And it was just coming out, like it was almost like coming out of me at the speed that like when you clean your computer, you see the words going across the computer when they're looking through files and stuff. It was really weird. So I thought, wow, this could be going on for a really long time. And it's only increased to the point where now there's sugar in everything. Like there's things that like you would never think have sugar. But if you look, I shop at a very fancy, all organic, very healthy kind of market here in Los Angeles. And I still struggle to find products that don't have any kind of sugar in them.
I know.
It's crazy. And it used to be that like you would go into a store and buy a coffee or a tea, and if you wanted sweetener, you had to tell them. Now, if you don't want it, you have to tell them because they're putting it in it. It's everywhere. It's in everything.
Yeah.
And, that's it's ubiquitous, just like something like Candida can become ubiquitous. And once they know it's there, they can play with it and do whatever they want with it. All right. So there's that. But then I took it kind of even a little bit further. And I started to think, well, now they have all these people eating who are like supposedly avoiding sugar.
Yes.
Right. And they are, the other thing with sugar is it's like, that's what feeds parasites. And if people actually went and really looked at their health, people are full of fungus, full of yeast, and full of parasites. That's what Candida is. People have it. They don't even know it. Anyone that's got bad breath, any kind of like exhaustion or autoimmune disease or anything, it's Candida related. Okay. So parasites are feeding on love sugar. And we have a parasitic consciousness going on in our reality for a long time, but it's at an extreme level right now. And it's also this parasitic consciousness has now is merging with AI. Okay. And so if there's all this parasites in the body, how do we know that in some, they can act almost like satellites, right? Like the parasite outside wants there to be parasites on the inside because that's sort of like the receptor for what they're trying to do. Okay. Right. So then I started to think, well, you have all these people now who are seemingly rejecting corn syrup and processed sugars and things like that. And even just people who say that they don't eat sugar, but a lot of them are on paleo diets where they do eat maple, honey, coconut sugar, agave, right? And if you look at those, so some of these people who go on these paleo diets are like, well, I'm not eating sugar anymore, but they eat a ton of that stuff, like a ton of it. Like they're eating just as much of that stuff as they used to sugar, and sometimes even more because they think it's okay. And if you really look at those things, they also break down to a crystalline substance that is cubic.
Yeah.
It's just higher quality. So now are we creating parasites that are like extreme athletes, right? We're feeding them better sugar. So they're more, because think about it. There's people here who think that there's conscious community and they're aware of that. And so, they know that people are starting to reject sugar and so the paleo diets come along, and that's a huge trend too. And there's a lot of good things about that. And the diet that I eat is in some ways similar to a paleo diet, but rejects all of that kind of sugar. The only sweeteners that I still eat, and I'm starting to even have some concerns about them, is the xylitol and the stevia.
Yeah.
They don't have a sugar count. So in terms of like having sugar in the body, those don't do that. But particularly with the xylitol, it is crystalline in nature also. So does that, it could be programmable. And the stevia, a lot of people don't like the taste of it, but it also, for people who are interested in having children, that's not a good idea for them to eat it because in Amazon, they use that as a birth control mechanism.
Really? Oh, yeah. Okay.
So it's a natural birth control mechanism that I believe once you stop eating it, it doesn't continue. It's not like it does permanent damage, but a lot of people don't know that. And there's stevia in a lot of things now when people are trying to eat healthy. Okay, so you have all these people, and a lot of people who eat these paleo diets are people who are into doing like CrossFit and all of that kind of exercise, which people go back and look at a show I did last year. We talked about CrossFit cults and possible mind control that's going on there, and Peter Thiel's relationship to that and what he's doing with his Palantir software and all this kind of thing. We're almost creating, it's possible, an army of people that are seemingly healthy, but possibly still under complete and total mind control,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And you're right, you know, and the other thing is like, if you look at, the, I didn't used to notice this because I used to be one of them, but if you look at the behavior of people who are consume a lot of sugar, and I would actually even say in some ways that people who consume the quote unquote healthier sugars more than the people who, a lot of times the people who consume the corn syrup and the GMO and the regular sugar, they're just completely out to lunch on the couch watching cartoons and, you know, whatever. But
Right.
these people who are seemingly thinking they're doing healthy, if you really observe their behavior, there's something about it that is very militant, very programmed, very controlled in some ways, and also like some level of, I'm careful how I say this, but parasitic type of consciousness sometimes going on there.
Right.
And I just, it's becoming more and more obvious to me. And I just feel like, wow, this is, I feel like I'm onto something, and I would like to have more time to look into it and whatnot. But I think it is a thing. And I think,
Agreed.
yeah. And I feel like it would,
Well, you know what, Emily, we can continue to have these conversations when you have
Yeah.
something that you want to say about it, and then we can just make a body of work. That is you, as you come up with stuff, let's make this body of work, because it's in the conversations, the back and forth conversations, that things get busted wide open. This is the only way. I mean, it's the most fruitful thing that we can do is have these conversations, because there's like 4 or 5 things that you've already said that I could circle back to, not just the sugar, although just to sort of work our way backwards. I don't know. Are you eating fruit?
So this is something that has come up. I do eat fruit. I green juice, not a lot. I green juice, and I put an apple in my green juice, and I eat berries. But other than that, I don't eat bananas, oranges, pineapples, things that have a lot of sugar.
Right.
But it has come up to me, both in, so when we had Lauda Leon on the show, we were talking about this a little bit, that, she doesn't eat fruit or anything like that at all.
I don't either.
And the other day I was in conversation with my friend Danny, who we actually just had on the show last night. And we were talking about how even just the taste of anything sweet immediately gets you hooked, takes you out of your body, like makes you, I mean, think about it. If you and parents at this point, a lot of them should know this. You resist giving your child juice as long as you can, because once they taste the juice, they're never going to want the water or anything like that again. Exactly. And it's true. And you watch kids like, it's crazy. And I see adults like that too. I witnessed an adult this summer who drinks more juice than any 5-year-old I've ever seen, know?
Right.
But even with stevia and xylitol, my friend was saying how when we get some little xylitol or stevia candies that taste good, and we're like, oh, we can have this because it's not full of sugar. Immediately, you want them all the time. You're eating a lot of them. And it's like being under the control of something that is outside of yourself.
Right.
It's inside of you, and now it's in control of you. And which is to me the definition of programmable matter. And that's why I'm taking, that's why, I'm going to take a look at xylitol and stevia the same way that I have with sugar. So yeah, absolutely. Like I think that.
Now, as far as you describe a green juice, I think that's one of the healthiest things you can put in your body. I love to do that. The mean green stuff with just one Granny Smith apple in there for the pectin, or you can even just put pectin in if you want to. However, I learned a long time ago that my body doesn't care what it is, what kind of sugar I put in it, whether it's refined sugar, fruit, whatever, honey, molasses, maple syrup, sugar to my body, and it's bad. You know what I mean? My body can't. My body can't handle it. And I always thought, well, maybe that's because I've destroyed some capacity that my body had to deal with. But no, my body just cannot handle sugars in any form. And when I say fruit, it freaks people out, but it's actually true. I think it's fruit.
This whole conversation that I've been having with people for the last couple of weeks has taken me back to, I'm not a religious person. I don't really know anything about the scriptures or text or anything like that. But maybe the reason that Adam and Eve and when they bit the apple, maybe that's when humanity started to fall, was when they tasted sugar. And if you look,
brilliant, Emily.
If you look, maybe it has nothing to do with like, you know, like that's when the snake came, the serpent, which is like a worm, like a parasite, right? Like if you look at on our Apple computers, there's an apple with a bite out of it. Maybe the reason the computers have control of us is because we took the bite of the apple.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's actually fantastic. Brilliant. Oh, I can't wait for people to hear that particular bit of this. That's absolutely fantastic. And, you know, just a couple of things really quick, Em, before I forget. People have been asking me, and this is really random, but I'm going to stick it in.
Yeah.
When I'm doing interviews these days, people are asking me what the hell it was that Harold was giving out, selling.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He said, I will say, yeah, I know he was selling something that he said was an antidote to this stuff, but I absolutely have no idea what's in it. And there's all kinds of rumors going on about it, like, oh, it was actually black goo. It was itself black goo, but again, programmable matter. Everybody's speculating that if something was in it that was programmable matter. So yes, absolutely, you're on the right track with that one for sure. And in terms of these e-cigarettes, sorry, I talked all night long.
No
you
worries.
know what? Once I get started with, they gave me an actual mic last night. I was just talking and talking.
Not you. Not
yeah,
you.
me, right? Anyway, so I have a bit of a voice issue this morning. Let me talk to you about these e-cigarettes out there.
Please.
Emily, I mean, this is preaching to the choir with Emily. So, but there's this thing that you get called popcorn lung. Have you seen that?
No.
When you smoke these cigarettes, it blows out the alveoli in your lungs, it breaks them down where you might have maybe it per square inch. I don't know. This is a random number, but say you have 50 little compartments per inch. It blows them out to where you have like 4. It breaks down the walls of your lungs and makes these huge spaces. They call it popcorn lung, and it's not curable. There's nothing they can do about it. So it's really seriously damaging your lungs.
What that sounds like to me, though, in some ways, is like a leaky gut or irritable bowel syndrome. And lots of people with candida develop that. And what that is so what happens with candida? Candida is that ubiquitous yeast that it is in everything. It's not, if it's in balance, it's not a horrible thing. But once it becomes out of balance, and there's many ways that happens, it grows over into fungus, right? Creates a lot of fungus. And then that fungus pokes holes in the gut lining that allow parasites to start going through it. And so that's what creates the irritable bowel and leaky gut. What you're talking about sounds like opening up the parts of the lung that should be covered and safe, allowing sugar to come through it, allowing all of it to bleed through, just like the same thing in the leaky gut. So it sounds like a similar thing there. So it wouldn't surprise me if that it does that, but maybe that's even the whole purpose of it.
Yeah, look up popcorn lung. Look up popcorn lung. And somebody I love very much was using one of those things and literally just gave her a carton of cigarettes. I know there's sugar in that tobacco, but I would rather have her, I said, I'd rather see smoke tobacco than suck on one of those things at this point.
Totally.
So anyway, be aware of that. Be very, very aware of that. Okay, so yes.
There's one other thing with the e-cigarettes I want to say real fast while we're talking.
Yeah.
This is maybe a stretch, but this is where my mind goes, right? This is what we do.
Do it.
So you have I'll be at a party and I'll see like a big guy, masculine guy, ripped, and he's smoking one of those things, and then he smells like French toast. So like or cinnamon buns or gummy bears or whatever, right? So like he smells sweet. So then like women used to be attracted to manly men. You know what I mean? Or whatever. And now it's like they're attracted to French toast, to gummy bears, to like something sugary and sweet, which is also part of the addiction. It's like, okay, like the whole thing, like everybody smells like candy all the time. And it's also like the bath products that are like flavored like candy and food. Like what, are we taking in sugar through our skin as well? And like, people, even I get mad when I see someone smoking that stuff because I intentionally don't eat sugar, but I know that when someone blows that shit around me, I'm taking in sugar through my skin. And I don't like that. That's like the same feeling as the chemtrails,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you a personal question. You don't have to answer it if you don't, and maybe you don't even know. But you started off talking about having this suspicion or semi-realization that maybe in the middle of the night you were out and about.
Yeah.
And then the sugar, you ingested the sugar sort of as a way to wake yourself up from the hypnosis. Do you have you had any addition, like, has that fleshed itself out for you, Emily? in any way, or is that just a sort of vague suspicion that you have?
So it's maybe a little bit of both. Like I do over the years, I've, brought back the way for anybody who's going through like retrieval of memories of things like this. It's like comes in like waves and comes very odd sometimes. And it isn't like you don't usually get like the whole memory of the whole thing that happened that day.
Right.
But one of the things I do have, and I'll say this here, is I do have memories of as a child being, and this was actually supposedly back before I was eating candy, but these things are related. And also some of this stuff in the way we deal with it in terms of time is not actually linear. So
Yeah.
I do have memories of being as a child in a roller skating rink that was in the area that I lived in the middle of the night by myself, going skating around in circles, red strobe lights flashing and listening to particular kinds of music and whatever. And that actually is, I've spoken to one other person who has a similar memory to that. And if you think about it, that's a really great way to program a child. Like,
Absolutely.
Right? Especially someone like me who would later become very interested in dance music and raves and nightclubs and things like that. It's kind of setting that, one of the things I've spoken about a lot with your friend Mark Devlin is mind control through dance music and whatnot. So that's priming the person for sure. So, the only other thing, like the only things that are specific is like the, some identification of a level of missing time with some of those things that did I really know what time I was leaving the house and when I was coming back when I was doing that? Like, was it just really 15 or 20 minutes? Like, sometimes I realized that, well, wait a second, like maybe it was 2 o'clock when I left and 5 o'clock when I came home. But again, these things the way I deal with this stuff is I don't try and push the information to come back, and I don't go really looking hard for like specifics, because I find when I do that, then you can start to create things possibly.
Exactly.
And also, I've found that the best way to deal with it is I deal with the memories as they come, and I seem to be able to deal with them that way. When I go looking, that's when things start to really like become messy for me. And so, I think trauma, which this is stored in the body. The body is really intelligent, and the body gives me the information at the pace that I can handle it.
Right.
And, and I don't, I'm at this point really much more interested in being in control of my life going forward than in bringing up all of the things that I need to know will be revealed to me over time. And once I'm on to once something has come up a little bit, then I do look into it somewhat. But I have spoken, with others who talk about either the same issues with candy. If you look into some of the cultures that do like ayahuasca ceremonies and vision quests and things like that, one of the ways they bring people back into their body is by feeding them sugar. And so it would make a lot of sense. The people who run programs, they use psychedelics in these programs. They know that. They know that, like, a way to anchor somebody back into their core personality or into their own body is by feeding them sugar. Now, in the Amazon, they'll give you a piece of fruit or whatever, but it's the same kind of idea. So
okay.
Yeah, that's
geez, Mary and Joseph. I don't want to use the whole phrase there. That's what I'm thinking. That was the most packed 20 minutes I've spent in a while, dude. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
So here's what I'm going to do, because Emily knows that I'm just completely a basket case because I was out doing a lecture last night. I'm going to put this out as 20 minutes or whatever. I don't know. It could have been more than that. With Emily today. And I hope when Emily has things like this that she's trying to unpack, that she'll unpack it in this way. We'll try to put a whole show together at some point when we have enough bits to do that. Or maybe we could do it on you and Randy, whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. It'll come around. It'll come together. And I'm really grateful to you for doing this, because I am absolutely convinced that if we don't understand food, we are so screwed, because that's really one of the major ways they've got us through our addictions. They've addicted us up one side and down the other by using the 5 senses. We have way more than 5 senses, gang, way more. But there's 5 that they're able to lock us down with. And food, 5 minutes on the tongue, and you know, what it does once it gets down in there is anybody's guess, really. But it's not what you think. It's not what you think is going on. That's for damn sure. Okay, and please look up popcorn lung. If you've got one of those things in your mouth, go buy a carton of cigarettes, man. That's what I did for someone I love. I was like, get that away from yourself. Go the other direction. I'm not advocating smoking processed tobacco, you know, cigarettes. I'm just saying I'd much rather see people do that than put one of those vapes in their mouth, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah?
I agree. Yeah.
Okay, darling. I'm going to have this out in about 15 minutes.
Okay, I want to tell you one thing off the air real quick just when we're done.
Oh, all right. Okay.
So
well, then we're going to say goodbye to you guys, and I'm going to have super secrets with my friend Emily now. Bye.
All right.